Welcome. I'm Dr. Jeff Borenstein. Everyone is touched by psychiatric conditions, either themselves or a loved one. Do not suffer in silence. With help, there is hope. Today on Healthy Minds,
a lot of people my age and younger don't necessarily understand mental illness and bipolar disorder. I just had a lot of unanswered questions. I was mentally exhausted. I just won a Super Bowl. It was the last game of my career, so I was very content walking away from the game. I don't know how they explain it scientifically, but I call it, that's when my bipolar really came out.
That's today on Healthy Minds. Healthy Minds is brought to you in part by the American Psychiatric Association Foundation, the Graham Beck Foundation, the New York State Psychiatric Association, and the New York State Office of Mental Health. Welcome to Healthy Minds. I'm Dr. Jeff Borenstein. Today I speak with former NFL player Keith O'Neill about his personal experiences living with bipolar disorder. He shares intimate details about symptoms which began in childhood and continued until adulthood. Despite these symptoms, Keith became a captain of the Super Bowl champion Indianapolis Colts, and more importantly, with treatment, is living a full, healthy life as a husband, father, and mental health advocate. Keith, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You've become involved in outreach to the public, especially young people, about bipolar disorder and mental illness in general. And I want to ask you what that's been like for you.
At times, to be honest with you, it's been a challenge because still a lot of people my age and younger don't necessarily understand mental illness and bipolar disorder. But on the same token, it's given me a lot of purpose.
You first knew that there might be issues for yourself when you were very young. And I'd like you to share with us what it was like for you at that point in time.
Sure, I can remember back when I was probably around the age of 8 or 7, very young kid, being really, really anxious, especially about going to sleep at night. I would toss and turn in bed. I would keep my parents up and my brother up, annoying them about not being able to sleep at night. I was petrified about going to sleep because I couldn't sleep. That was probably my number one symptom as a young child. As I grew older, I was known as being very irritable, very moody. I was, even though I was an athlete and active child, I was still labeled as lazy by some family members and some friends. And unfortunately, I also had suicidal thoughts probably around the age of 11 or 12 years old, which were very scary because I didn't know why I had these thoughts. Obviously, I was in a depression, I would assume, and I was undiagnosed bipolar disorder.
When you were having those kind of thoughts at a young age of wanting to kill yourself, did you share those thoughts with anybody?
No, I didn't. I didn't know how. I didn't know what to say to my parents or to my brother or to people that were close to me. I unfortunately didn't know how to share those feelings.
So you really kept them...
I kept them bottled up.
Kept them bottled up. So one of your messages in speaking to young people is don't suffer in silence, ask for help.
Absolutely. If I could go back again and do it over, I definitely would have reached out to my parents or someone at school, a teacher, a mentor, a coach, a friend, somebody, and tell them how I was feeling.
So even with these symptoms, you were still able to excel at football. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your progression in terms of playing football.
Well, I started young at playing baseball, and that was my love. I started young playing soccer and sports. My father wouldn't let me play football until I was old enough, until he thought I was old enough to play until 8th grade. And I think it was my my purpose, my outlet. It gave me something to focus on other than my thoughts. And, from there it just went on. I excelled in Pop Warner Little League football. I went on and played high school football where I did very well and earned a scholarship to Northern Arizona University to play football. And from there, I went on to the NFL and played for the Cowboys and the Colts. And it was difficult at times playing football, high pressure job, high pressure sport, especially in professional football. It was very difficult living up to expectation and pressure. Not only that the coaches put on you but what you put on yourself. So I would say the NFL was very bittersweet for me. Very, very tough.
You, at times during your professional career, experienced anxiety, insomnia, and you actually went to the coach to discuss this, what happened.
Sure, I just got cut by the Dallas Cowboys, and I got picked up the following day by the Indianapolis Colts, and I was experiencing anxiety, high-level anxiety, where I didn't sleep for about 4 nights. And it wasn't a manic episode. I know what a manic episode is. I've been in them before, and it was anxiety and insomnia. So I decided at this point in my career, which I was going into my third season, that I was either gonna quit the NFL or I was gonna get help. And I didn't want to quit. I wanted to get help. So I walked into Coach Tony Dungy's office, who's a great man, and I sat down and I talked to him about what was going on. And what he did at the time really surprised me. It doesn't surprise me now what he did, but he brought in the general manager, Bill Polian, the head doctor, the head trainer. He even brought my wife in, who was sitting in the car in her pajamas, brought her in. And we just sat there and talked about my symptoms and what was going on. And, we really didn't get down to the root of it, with a team doctor. And I even went and saw a psychologist after that and didn't really get down to the root of it because it was still hard to diagnose. They wrote it off as anxiety in the NFL. But it was just nice to know that, these coaches and these front office guys were caring and to help me get through a really difficult time.
After your meeting with Coach Dungy and the others, including your wife, you were able to ultimately rejoin the team and do so in a leadership position as captain. What was that like for you?
It was great, knowing that I had missed a game due to my undiagnosed bipolar disorder, and to come back and play at such a high level and prove to the coaches and to the organization that I could still play. And I was nominated as a captain. It was one of the highest honors, really, of my life, to represent the team with guys like Peyton Manning and David Thornton. It was truly an honor and something that I'll remember forever.
So a key message for people is, even with undiagnosed and not yet treated bipolar disorder, but with some help for some of the symptoms, you were able to function at a very high level. Despite the anxiety, the insomnia, you were still able to function.
I was able to function, and I think anybody with bipolar disorder, undiagnosed bipolar disorder, understands how difficult that can be. But with enough determination, wanting something bad enough, anything is possible.
It wasn't until after you retired from the NFL, after winning the Super Bowl, that you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about the process of receiving that diagnosis.
I retired from the NFL because of my undiagnosed bipolar disorder. I just had a lot of unanswered questions. I was mentally exhausted. I just won a Super Bowl. It was the last game of my career, so I was very content walking away from the game with that. But my wife and I, we eventually moved back to my hometown of Buffalo, New York, and we wanted to start a family. And we settled down, we bought our dream home, and we wanted to have a family, and we got pregnant with our first child. And my wife had a miscarriage. and that was a trigger for me. I don't know how they explain it scientifically, but I call it, that's when my bipolar really came out. And I started in a very manic episode. I was in a great mood. I was on cloud nine, very euphoric, staying up 18 hours a day, working nonstop while my wife was grieving. And then eventually I started spending money, a lot of money, which is very common in manic episodes. I'm very conservative, so it was very unlike me to spend this type of money that I was spending, into tens of thousands of dollars. And eventually, all these symptoms of euphoria and happiness and motivation, they switched very quickly to paranoia, delusional thinking, and very scary things. I thought my brain waves were being tapped by a higher power, and my phones were tapped, and things like that, things that are delusional thinking. And I began to hallucinate, and that's when I finally got my diagnosis as bipolar disorder 1, and it answered a lot of questions.
Helped explain what you had been going through all these years.
Yes.
With a real explanation for those symptoms. And tell us about the treatment that you received.
Initially, I was put on medication right away, and it knocked out the mania. I mean, like that, overnight, the mania was gone. But then, as we know, bipolar disorder, you're high, and then you fall into a depression. And I fell into a very dark depression for about 6 to 8 months. And this is when a lot of the medications started coming in, and it was kind of like, take this one, or take this one isn't working, take that one. And that's why I think it's key to find the right doctors and the right medications. And finally, after about 18 months, we went and saw a specialist, and he put me on the right medication. And then after about 2 to 4 months after that, I was doing much better. It was just a long process.
So a key message for people is, number one, to get treatment, and number two, be persistent. Sometimes it can take a little while until the right mix of medicines are found.
Absolutely. You can't give up. I mean, the side effects were tremendously difficult to live with. But I just knew, and I did my own research, and I knew that with medication, and medication being one of the number one keys to bipolar disorder recovery, that I just had to stay persistent. And I did, and I finally found what I think is the right combination of meds.
In addition to medicine, what else are you doing to maintain your health?
I exercise. I run long distance as much as possible. I'm vocal. I don't hide it. I think that was one of the toughest things for me, was hiding my illness. For the first 3 years that I was diagnosed, I told very few people. I didn't even tell extended family. And living in that lie, I guess you can call it, not telling anybody because you're ashamed, you're embarrassed, that for me was just as hard, as having the illness itself, not telling anyone, especially because I went from such a public, role of playing in the NFL to all of a sudden, living this secret.
How about sleep habits and schedules? Do you do anything with regards to that to help maintain your health?
Absolutely, that's key. I try to go to sleep at the same time every night, get up with the baby every morning, and exercise every morning when I get up, and just try and stay in that same routine.
One of the keys for you also is having a supportive family, a supportive wife and extended family. Tell me what that's meant for you.
It's been a lot, and the illness is hard on family. I think it shocked everybody, even though with my symptoms growing up, the intense episode that I went through, it shocked everyone and scared everybody, that it was very hard for everyone to try and fix it. I don't know if I could have done it without them, especially my wife. I don't think would have been able to do it.
You've done a lot of work to reach out, and you've developed a foundation. I'd like you to tell us about that.
Sure, my foundation is called Fourth and Forever. It's a play on words for football, like fourth down is your last chance, and forever, meaning, sometimes this illness feels like you can have it forever, even though there is light at the end of the tunnel. We are raising awareness and we are funding research, and I'm very passionate about it. And I have a great board. We are all very committed to it, and we have fun.
And you're also working on a book about your experiences.
Yes.
What's that like for you to begin that process?
I'm realizing it's becoming very therapeutic to relive some of the things that I've kind of blocked out in my life. The title's called Under My Helmet. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm working with some great people on it, and I'm looking forward to having it come out.
As you've spoken publicly, gone to schools and spoken to especially young people, what's been their response to you?
The response is overwhelming. When I'm done speaking, I realize why I'm doing it. Because sometimes it's hard on me to get up and speak in front of a lot of people. It's good work, and there's a lot of people out there that need inspiration, who come up to me and say, my brother lives with bipolar disorder, or my son, or myself, and your story is so similar, thank you so much for sharing. It's very overwhelming, and at the same time, it's inspiring.
For somebody watching right now who is experiencing some of the types of symptoms that you've experienced, what do you say to them?
So never give up. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. I know that's very cliche, but with the right medication, determination, anything is possible. Don't ever give up, and just keep on believing in yourself.
Keith, you are an inspiration, and certainly demonstrate that with help there is hope. And I appreciate getting to know you and appreciate all that you're doing to help so many people. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Next, I speak with Dr. Robert Hirschfeld, a leading expert in bipolar disorder. For people out there who have heard of bipolar disorder, but maybe they don't know exactly what it is, tell us what this condition really is.
Bipolar disorder, or manic depressive illness, it's usually a lifetime illness, although sometimes people do get better and stay better. And it's one that's characterized by episodes or periods of being abnormally high or being abnormally low. These periods are different from just highs and lows. Everyone on the earth has good days, bad days, where people describe racing thoughts. They have a real lot of energy. They want to take on projects. Sometimes they think they can fly. They think they're Superman. They think they have special powers. Those are the highs, and they'll last anywhere from a few days to a week to a month or even 6 months. On the other hand, are period of lows. People have no energy. They feel like they're the worst person on earth. They feel like they're a failure. And when it gets really bad, they don't even get out of bed. And they don't bathe, they don't take care of themselves. And it's almost the polar opposite. We can do a pretty good job of bringing people down pretty quickly from a mania or a hypomania, but it's a lot harder to go in the opposite direction.
One of the important things for the person with bipolar disorder and also the people around them is to know when they may be showing early signs of an exacerbation in the illness, whether it be beginning of a manic episode or beginning of a depression. What are those early signs people should look for?
The early signs of an impending manic attack are often abnormally good mood. People start to get more activity, more interest in things, start not needing so much sleep. People get more sociable, they get in your face, they are difficult to interrupt.
Can't get a word in edgewise.
Exactly. And so that's the kind of thing that often happens early on when someone's starting to get manic or hypomanic.
And when someone is starting to become depressed what should we be looking for?
One of the first things is irritability. They're just more irritable, they're more jumpy, they're more, a little bit of edge to them. And also they become more socially withdrawn, they respond less, they don't look at you, they tend to be looking down. Those are the kinds of things that you often see as early signs of depression.
If a family member is concerned about their loved one, that they think maybe they are having some of these symptoms of a manic episode, what should they do?
Well, the first thing to do would be to call their doctor. The second thing is if it gets worse and you're not getting support, take him or her to a local emergency room, because all emergency rooms will do a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation and then help with figuring out what the next best step is. If you have someone who is really out of control and that refuses to get help, which is not uncommon at all, you can call the police. And in many cities, and I used to be in Texas, we had what we call mental health deputies. So instead of simply being a uniformed policeman, there would be someone who is very sophisticated with dealing with someone with an emotional problem and being somewhat out of control, and can be very helpful in getting that person more calmed down and getting them to the hospital for treatment.
So if it gets to the point that a person feels a need to call the police, it's important up front to explain to the police that the behaviors that are occurring that are of concern are related to a psychiatric condition, so the police know up front that that's the cause of what's happening, not some other cause.
It's very important to let the people know on the other side of the 911 line why you're calling, and that you're concerned that you have a family member or somebody whom you're concerned about is out of control.
Sometimes people who have bipolar disorder show up for treatment, but they've only experienced depression. What happens then?
About 1 in 5 people who present to a primary care provider with depression, in fact, have bipolar disorder. It's missed for several reasons. One is that when someone comes in and they're depressed, the patient himself or herself and the doctor, the last thing in the world they're thinking about is, could this person have ever been high, because they look so low, and the patient may not even think about it or remember it. So if you don't ask about it, you're not going to find out about it. The reason that it's important to identify bipolar disorder in people who are depressed is that the treatments are not the same. And in general, the treatments that work for plain or unipolar or major depression are not particularly effective for bipolar depression.
Often people with bipolar disorder abuse alcohol, misuse other drugs. And I'd like you to speak about that relationship between chemical dependency and bipolar disorder.
One of the most frequent comorbid problems that people with bipolar disorder have is abusing alcohol or other substances. And unfortunately, they are synergistic. They make things worse. So you want to treat both at the same time. There's been controversy in the field. Do you treat first the bipolar? Do you treat first the alcohol? I think it's very clear you got to treat both at the same time, and you got to be aggressive, because it's a terrible combination.
You have to treat the whole person, not
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
one part.
Right.
Bob, I want to thank you for the work that you've done over the years and continue to do for a better understanding, better treatment of bipolar disorder, and thank you for joining us here today.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Jeff.
As we heard from Keith O'Neill and from Dr. Hirschfeld, people with bipolar disorder can live full, happy, and productive lives. Most of us will not be a captain of a Super Bowl championship team, but Keith's experiences show that with proper treatment and the support of family and friends, anything is possible. Remember, with help, there is hope. Until next time, I'm Dr. Jeff Borenstein. Goodbye. With help, there is hope. Healthy Minds is brought to you in part by the American Psychiatric Association Foundation, the Graham Beck Foundation, the New York State Psychiatric Association, and the New York State Office of Mental Health.